You ever had that one favorite shirt of yours that fit perfectly, had a color that suited you really well, and you wore it only on special occasions? But then your life changed and you put it away in a box and forgot it existed. But 6 or 7 years later, you take that shirt out and try to wear it again, fully expecting it to fit and look the same, but it doesn't. You're fatter, the shirt's a bit faded, and it just doesn't seem as perfect as it used to. So you put it back in the box and forget it ever existed. That's basically what happened with Captain America: Brave New World. The supposed start of something new, something exciting, a step towards a new MCU, they said. Well, I call bullshit on that one because after watching this movie, I realized that it's just a rehash of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which I will point out in detail in this video, except the characters are boring, the storyline incoherent, and the execution is about 10 times worse. I've seen a bunch of people calling it a quote-unquote really good movie, but what I think those same people don't realize is that it's a good movie compared to all the other turds shit out by the current irrelevant MCU machine. It's almost like saying diarrhea is better than constipation because at least that shit's out. I went into the movie theater with little to no expectations, and to be fair, those low expectations were fulfilled just about enough to justify the low ticket price in an empty theater on a Tuesday afternoon. Now I'm gonna delve really deep into the plot and talk about all the details, so those who still want to watch it, just make sure you watch this video later because it's gonna make a lot more sense then. The movie started off on a low note for me because it was clear from the get-go that Harrison Ford was playing his own version of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross instead of giving an honest attempt at emulating what the legendary William Hurt did in the MCU before his passing. Why? I know that Ford is a legend in his own right, there's no two ways about it, but the absolute lack of character continuity for Ross made it feel like an entirely new character which I never connected with. So, Ross is elected as the new president of the United States and 5 months pass. And in the present day, an international terrorist has stolen some adamantium and has taken a few people hostage overseas, and Captain America gets there to save them. And although he saves all of the hostages, the leader of the mercenary group escapes. I wonder where I've seen that before. Well, I can't remember. There's also a new Falcon now named Joaquin Torres because they just can't let a character or a moniker retire, can they? And after a successful mission, Cap is invited to the White House, where the leaders of more than 4 countries will be present, and he decides to extend an invitation to his mentally unstable president, or rather establishment-hating friend, Isaiah Bradley. Well, it doesn't sound like a bad idea at all, does it? And for some reason, the once ruthless and cutthroat Ross is now a softie for Wilson and asks him to reform the bootleg Avengers in private. In private. Which means it was a covert request, which he immediately shares with his buddies. State secrets, bitch. It's then revealed that the celestial that rose out of the Indian Ocean is full of adamantium, and the US is spearheading a campaign to share this resource with the world. Well, thankfully they've clarified it's a piece of fiction. And during this event, a weird song plays and Bradley and a few others attack the president and cause mayhem. Bradley tries to escape, Wilson chases him down, and it's very evident that Bradley was under some kind of mind control, but he's still placed under arrest. And rightfully so. And Wilson's reaction to this? The same guy whose friend just tried to assassinate the president, who Wilson himself extended an invitation to and forced the president's hand to allow him to come to the party, decides to barge into a secure location to talk to the president, and not a single member of the Secret Service tries to subdue or physically stop him. What the actual fuck? Wilson asks Ross to let him investigate. Ross outright rejects, and logically so. And that's the scene where Babe Ruth, Lil Red. I'm just gonna call her Lil Red. So this chick is given the charge to investigate. And who is she, you ask? Get a load of this. A former Black Widow, who's also an ex-Mossad, is now the current chief security advisor for the President of United States. How much inclusivity do they want?
Yes.
Whatever that is. Wilson, being Wilson, decides to go dig into the matter himself, and the new Falcon joins him, and they finally get to Camp Echo 1, where they find out that a super genius is being housed by a high-ranking government official. I wonder where I've seen that before. Well, I can't remember. It's then revealed that the whole plan to pitch Japan against the US and put pressure on Ross and make him look bad was formed by this guy, a mutated smart broccoli named Samuel Stearns. He's also left pretty much his entire plan on the walls in case Wilson doesn't understand or connect the dots. Pretty neat, isn't it? Why are all the quote-unquote geniuses revealing their plans to potential threats in the MCU? I mean, my IQ is not anywhere near Einstein, I agree, but even I wouldn't do something that stupid. Stearns unleashes brainwashed soldiers on Wilson and Taurus, but they're rescued by Lil Red. Once again, logic decides to suck my big, fat... Logic decides to take a walk in the park because this little 5-something feet tall 90-something pound girl is kicking the asses of multiple massive 250-pound brainwashed soldiers. Yup, totally believable. At least in the comics, she's a mutant. But as it is in the MCU right now, the mutants don't even exist. So they can't even give that as a reason as to why she's so strong. So this former Black Widow is now helping Captain Falcon save the world. I wonder where I've seen that before. Well, I can't remember. Now on the other side, Japan thinks that Ross hired the terrorists to steal the adamantium, so it's a race against time for both countries to reach the island and take it for themselves. There's also a little subplot where we see Ross taking some pills now and again, but since the trailers very clearly showed us that the Red Hulk is gonna show up, we all know what that's leading to. So Wilson and Taurus reach the Celestial Island, and there's a decent action set piece where Wilson takes out 2 brainwashed fighter pilots, trying to incite war with the Japanese, where Falcon is gravely injured and is rushed to the hospital. But due to Cap's swift actions, the day is saved and the potential war is thwarted. But the bad guy isn't satisfied as Ross refuses to give in to his rage despite his best efforts, so he surrenders himself to Wilson and leaks a story in the media about his connection to Ross and how Ross incarcerated him for his own benefit, and that's what leads to Ross changing into the Red Hulk. And this is where the film takes a serious nosedive into a shitstorm of stupidity, because even an enhanced super soldier like Steve couldn't take on the Hulk for 2 minutes. But somehow Wilson, a regular old guy, is suddenly stopping entire flagpoles with his arms. I mean, even if the jet boosters in his suit are strong enough to stop the Red Hulk's insane momentum, how are his little old human arms able to withstand that kind of force? As I said, logic has left the chat. Anyway, the fight goes on for a little while, but Captain America talks this brainwashed individual into realizing who he really is and manages to end the fight with just his words. I wonder where I've seen that before. Well, I can't remember. And to those who say that the comic version of Red Hulk has his rage under control, let me tell you, Ross looked every bit the angry beast as the Hulk did in previous outings. So that doesn't really seem accurate. In the aftermath, Bradley is released and is now best friends with Lil Red for some reason. Ross resigns as the president and is incarcerated at Raft Prison, where he reunites with his estranged daughter Betty, and Sam begins reforming the Avengers by first hiring a recovering Falcon. And in the post-credits scene, Mr. Broccoli warns Wilson of dangers that are coming from other worlds. So that's the plot of Winter Soldier. Brave New World. I'm sure the director Julius Onah has given his best to make a decent if not an entirely fresh film. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. It did speak, but I think it said the opposite. But the problem in Brave New World was that every idea that worked in Winter Soldier fails here miserably because of storyline incoherence. But before I get to the bad stuff and ruin everyone's mood, let me talk about the good things first. I really like the fact that Mackie didn't try to emulate Steve Rogers at all. His character seems very original, as it should be, and that's a huge positive. Because nobody wanted him to try to be Black Steve Rogers. Also, everyone around him respects him and has graciously accepted the fact that he's the new Captain America, which further strengthened his screen presence. They'd already done enough race baiting and played enough victim cards in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so thankfully, that was absent here. And Carl Lumbly's acting when he's captured and in the prison visitation was brilliant and genuinely moving. His fear and despair at being unfairly locked up once again was put on the screen very well. And, well, that's it, I guess. Because honestly, there's little else to appreciate in this film, so I guess we should get to the the bad part now. First and foremost, what's up with the vibranium nanotech suit? That was just overkill on every single level. Cap being that heavily armored and protected instantly takes away any danger. And at the end of the day, Captain America is the embodiment of never giving up. With a suit that overloaded with tech, he'd just be lazy if he ever even remotely thinks of giving up. And I'm not even gonna mention how it should have been China, not Japan, who should have been the potential threat, because do I even need to say it? Never mind. And the new Falcon is just bland. He's been playing fanboy for a bit too long now. And most people, including myself who watched the disaster that was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, barely remember anything about it and would certainly never go back to watch it again. So their chemistry here is almost non-existent. Whereas on the other hand, the barely 2 or 3 scenes in Winter Soldier where Wilson appears before donning the suit did more to establish him as a solid character than 5 long episodes ever did for Joaquin Torres. This clearly shows the disparity between great and sleazy writing. Now for all the same things that work perfectly in Winter Soldier but failed miserably in Brave New World. The scene where he saves hostages. Even if you ignore the poorly choreographed fight scenes, which I don't know why one would ignore given how the previous movies had some of the best action scenes ever, but still the stakes are monumentally low. A few civilian hostages in Mexico versus a SHIELD vessel with classified intel and hostages that might prove to be security risks if not saved. And the second one, Arnim Zola's mind being preserved on a computer in a classified location by SHIELD made perfect sense. Zola was a brilliant scientist in his own right and was the last high-ranking member of the former Hydra, which meant SHIELD could have potentially used him to wipe out any remaining Hydra agents. But Zola still managed to reform the new Hydra in secret. And him giving up his plan to stall Rogers in an attempt to eliminate him was totally justified. He'd witnessed Rogers' capabilities firsthand, so he knew that Rogers being around would potentially end Hydra, hence the full disclosure and the sacrifice. But Ross imprisoning Stearns, that was quite simply evil. A powerful man locking up a smart guy and lying to him about giving him his freedom back sounds like Ross did Stearns dirty. And this supposed genius who can see all possibilities couldn't see that coming? And why didn't he just control the minds of the people around him and escape? What was he waiting for? It could not have been stupider. Also, Natasha helping Rogers and Wilson was personal. She was very close to Nick Fury and Fury trusted Rogers, hence the helping hand. Also, Fury wasn't up to anything particularly evil. But Lil Red, she just randomly showed up at Camp Echo 1 and decided to help Wilson and Taurus, which means she either knew that Stearns was being held captive there, which makes her an accomplice to Ross, or she was tracking the two, which begs the question, why didn't she stop them before they infiltrated a high security military site? But either way, it still made no sense. And the worst of the lot, Wilson lullabying Ross. Are you f***ing kidding me? The only logical thing would have been if Betty spoke to the Red Hulk and he changed back to Ross. See, in the Winter Soldier, Steve spoke to his best friend, the guy behind a fog of decades of brainwashing, and it barely worked. It took endless carnage and irreparable damage for Steve to get through to Bucky. And he's just a slightly enhanced individual compared to these world-shattering rage monsters known as Hulks. How did the creators surmise that this makes sense? And the result of all of these shortcomings, the movie has seen a 70% dip in week 2 and has grossed about $290 million against a budget of $180 million. And week 3 has been even more abysmal, with the film barely touching $350 million even with literally no competition. That does sound pretty good on the surface, but many people are claiming that the reported $180 million production budget isn't quite accurate, especially considering all the suspected reshoots that took place. And when marketing costs are added up, the movie needs at least $400 million plus to break even, which looks pretty unlikely at this point. So this seems like another L for the MCU. All of these instances clearly point out just how low the MCU has fallen. They are just trying to push out whatever soulless dirt that's stuck in the pipeline in a hope that they might someday strike gold. Whatever happened to the MCU of the old, where every single thing was connected and every action had a consequence which permeated throughout past, present and future. Brave New World, more like Stale New World. A below average outing which offers nothing new but manages to retain the name and the memories of the Captain America of the old days. That's it for today, people. I'm gonna go eat some chicken momos.